Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adi and today I have another Series 12 team report, the first one from Salt Lake City Regionals, and we have Jeremy Boyd. Jeremy, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing pretty well, thanks, Adi. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. I actually got back to my house like half an hour ago from the regionals, so
Oh,
really
awesome.
excited to start working on this team reports and look back at this like the really like surprisingly diverse metagame that we had. But do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself before we jump into the really cool team that you ran?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I started playing VGC when I was I can't remember how old I was. I think it was like around 8 years old. When I went with the friend who I came with here. To yeah, here as in Salt Lake City. I'm still at this Airbnb, but yeah, it was like the Pokemon Platinum, like VGC, and there I like didn't even know what special attack was. My poor Gunzi used Giga Impact on like a Blissey, and it didn't do much damage. And yeah, so I started playing then, and then but I started getting like serious around 2020 at the beginning when I went to this premiere challenge and placed fourth. And then that was really exciting. That really built my confidence a lot, and so I was really inspired to like keep playing, get stronger. And then I played in the worlds or the Players Cups, and then qualified for the North American regionals by the Players Cup 4, and then came to the Salt Lake City regionals, and I'm planning to attend a couple more. I'm really excited about it. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, especially you got top eight at this regional, right? So you are well on your ways to earning that world's invite in your first year playing, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the team because this team was a really cool, very different team than what we see normally. Definitely like out of left field. What made you decide to bring Necrozma Duskmane to this regional?
Well, so it was kind of like, do you know that quote Karen has in Pokemon? It's like it's something about like using your favorites. I wish I knew it off the top of my head, but Necrozma Duskmane. So I had experimented a lot with it in Series 11, and like in that Players Cup 4, I had this really cool Tailwind Necrozma that was doing really well in that best of one format. Was like, oh my gosh, this big cat's going pretty fast.
Hmm.
And then so I started off experimenting with the Tailwind Necrozma again, but that was just like not really viable in the best of three, and in this new dual restricted format. But yeah, I really wanted to bring it, and having experimented with it for so long, I kind of knew how bulky it could get, and just how offensive it was. And like looking at its stats, it has like one of the highest natural base attack stats, and then its defenses are really high as well. And then paired with Prism armor, it's just a great weakness policy candidate. Because it's also weak to like everything. It's got its four weaknesses. What ground, fire, dark, and ghost, which are also really prevalent in the meta. Like you're gonna find those attacks everywhere. You have to really go out of your way, I think, not to hit Necrozma with a super effective attack. And if you're not hitting it with super effective attacks, you're not dealing too much damage to it anyway. So I knew that I knew that Necrozma was really strong, and so I wanted to play with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess talk me through the team building process. And once you settled on Necrozma, how did you fill out the rest of the team?
Yeah, so after Duskmane, I knew so my Series 11 team didn't have a water type. And with I knew that I also wanted rain. And so being able to add Kyogre as a water type that could cover its weaknesses in ground and fire, plus rain for some fire resistance it was going to take me so far. So I knew that I wanted to play with Necrozma and Kyogre. And shout out to the Kansas Missouri Moonlights in the USPA for helping me like really craft this team. I knew I wanted these two restricteds, and they totally helped me like they helped me finish the rest of it, because at first I had a lot of familiarity with Dusclops, so I needed a Trick Room setter. So I had this Necrozma Duskmane. I knew. Well, I was hoping I didn't have to run Trick Room on it. The Moonlights put me on that it would be really nice to have Trick Room on Necrozma, and that was a really smart idea. And then I knew I wanted one of its partners to be able to set Trick Room, and so I had a lot of familiarity with Dusclops, but Dusclops was just really vulnerable. Like it couldn't hold a mental herb since it sort of needed Eviolite, and it was just taking a ton of damage from these all of these restricted Mons attacks. Um, and so yeah, Dusclops was just really vulnerable, and the Moonlights put me on to Mimikyu, and Mimikyu was incredible, and it could have only had 3 moves, and it still would have been insane. So that 4th move slot, I figured I needed Taunt, Parting Shot, Spore, even Protect. It needed Trick Room, and then I also wanted it to, as like, so I was using Tornadus with Tailwind and Brutal Swing as the proc, and so I wanted this Trick Room setter to also be able to proc my Necrozma, just put out a lot of pressure really quickly. And so going with Shadow Sneak, incredible. Also breaks sashes and can deal up to like 60% damage to Calyrex Shadow Rider. Even though I only actually faced 1 in my entire run. But yeah, so that was my 3rd Pokemon, Mimikyu. And then so the interesting thing about this Mimikyu too is that when I was looking for a 4th move, I sort of thought about like Wood Hammer for Gastrodon, and I thought about that really like right before the tournament as well, but decided against it. I was looking at Safeguard, as my own sort of Misty Terrain. The Mimikyu could set, as it is a fairy type, haha. And I was even looking a little bit at Will-O-Wisp, but didn't think I was too. This team isn't. I mean, aside from that Regieleki, it's not too vulnerable to burn. I mean, if Necrozma gets burned, I mean that's definitely terrible. But yeah, there wasn't too much burning in the meta, and not even much Scald in the meta either. And so I ended up on Light Screen, and I put Light Clay on Mimikyu based on the assumption that everyone else would assume it had Mental Herb. So it was a risky gamble that really paid off. Light Screen came in clutch in a ton of my sets. And a little bit at the end against Joe. I had set it up in game 1 against Joe. But yeah, so my Mimikyu I just decided should have Light Screen. And so then I guess going back to Necrozma, like thinking about defenses, so Necrozma is built specifically, so these EVs let it live any Astral Barrage, as long as I have a partner on the field. Yeah, even a Life Orbed Max Modest Astral Barrage. And then a bit of defense investment in defense, and then remaining investment.
Wait, is that after a Light Screen that you live the Astral Barrage?
Nope.
Oh
nope.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, Prism Armor is cracked. It is insane. Yeah. Yeah, because then I'll live that Astral Barrage, and then Mimikyu right next to it. Set up Trick Room. I break its Sash, or just Sunsteel Strike into it, and Oko it immediately. But yeah, probably set up Trick Room. But anyway, yeah. And then its attack. So its attack right now is the same as the max of a Zacian. That's Jolly Max Speed. So Necrozma's almost a Zacian that can get big. Almost. just doesn't have Intrepid Sword.
Yeah, it just doesn't get the free +1.
Right.
You get to +2, so it's fine.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, and so the next Pokemon, I think the next Pokemon I put on the team was probably Amoonguss. I think, yeah, so just sort of a general trend, I think, in this format right now is there's a lot of support. There's definitely a lot of big damage, but I definitely thought that all the damage I probably needed was from Necrozma and Kyogre, actually. And that turned out to be true a lot of the time. I did bring Incineroar pretty often as well. But this Incineroar, I kind of realized is somewhat passive, having 4 attacking moves. Yeah, and no parting shot. Like, if I want to lower special attack, Incineroar has to stay in, and it's never dealing too much damage. But I built it so that it could deal as much damage as possible. I guess while I'm talking about Incineroar, I think I added Amoonguss next, but Incineroar. So I felt that it was probably like necessary to bring an Incineroar, and it's just so awesome. Its move pool, its typing, and its ability, and so then I wanted to give it an item that let me boost its stats and make it like really offensive. So yeah, this Incineroar is super specially bulky, and then is calced to live a neutral attack Groudon. Any neutral attack Groudon Precipice Blades without Life Orb. Yeah, so that's what it's calced to live, and then yeah, this was just sort of the Incineroar. I wanted something, and it's also, I didn't max it at all in my run, but it's an alright max candidate as well, with such high attack and being able to set up the sun should I need it. But yeah, so then I also had this Amoonguss. This Amoonguss, I approximately equalized its defenses, and I think 244. This is 244, right? Yeah. Nearly max HP. But
Yep.
yeah, and so this Amoonguss is an Amoonguss. It's my healer Amoonguss. And so what makes my healer Amoonguss specifically viable, because I don't think Pollen Puff is typically viable, but here Necrozma being able to set up just massive defenses gives a lot more value out of HP. Right, so like a max Steelspike, you're getting hit with a Precipice Blades, Amoonguss lives, Necrozma lives, and then you max Steelspike return, even if you are slower, then you get that healing up, and right, because your defenses are boosted, each HP point is sort of worth more, which makes it, and then also Pollen Puff is great, with this Life Orb Kyogre, as it's taking away, one Pollen Puff is 5 extra moves, and then even with Flare Blitz on occasion, I've definitely healed my Incineroar before in testing. But yeah, and so I ended up giving it the Focus Sash. Oh, and then of course Spore, of course Rage Powder, and Protect just for survivability. And I gave it the Focus Sash because I wanted it to live a plethora of super effective attacks, more than just flying, and not just super effective attacks, but even a Palkia, like a Helping Handed Palkia, and then sometimes like I can't remember for sure, but maybe even like a Life Orb Palkia, like a Max Wormwind just does massive damage into it, and yeah, that's not even super effective. So yeah, this Amoonguss can definitely be a safe lead, and when I have a free switch in, it's even like if when a Pokemon faints, it's still exerting a ton of pressure that I know, and that my opponent will only know after game 1 on a closed team sheet. But so, and then I was looking for my 6th slot, and I messed up. This Regieleki is admittedly, I brought it once. It fainted very quickly. It did not add like any value to the team. I thought it could be an interesting surprise that would help me win game 1s or game 2s. It was so risky to bring, so I brought it once. This Regieleki, I think a Regieleki. So my thought process was I want Regieleki because I have a really hard Trick Room team, and I also want the opposite end in the opposite extreme. So I wanted the fastest Pokemon in the meta in the game. and so I brought Regieleki, but in truthfulness, it definitely should have been. It could have still been a Regieleki. In team preview, it's definitely pressure an opponent has to prepare for just in case. Because it can be great in the end game, a great lead. Regieleki is an incredible Pokemon. But it definitely could have been a more standard Regieleki set, or even something. And then looking back, having written a team report now, it also could have been something that helped me with Gastrodon alone. And also my team has a really, really tough matchup into Kartana. So fire, just like another fire type or another grass type. I was just looking at Volcarona, which could be an interesting thing to put on it. But yeah, the Regieleki, yeah, I'm sorry, buddy. I did not bring you. I did not make you well.
It's a cool idea. I definitely played an Explosion Elky, I think like the day before the tournament on ladder, and got totally caught off guard with it, albeit on a Calyrex Shadow team, which was, maybe a little easier to pull off the explosion strat. But Elky, seeing an Elky in T preview is always terrifying, especially when they lead it, because you just don't know what it's going to be. You don't know what it's trying to do. It can do so many different things. And so even if it didn't do that much, it definitely exerted some team preview pressure. Although, I think things like Volcarona or other things that maybe patch those tougher matchups probably make a little more sense moving forward.
Yeah, entirely, definitely. And that's the team. Yeah.
So, did you ever consider other moves on your Pokemon? So, I guess, for example, I know I had the debate with my team that I used at Salt Lake City, where my Amoonguss, I didn't know if I wanted to use Pollen Puff or if I wanted to use a Grass move because I was using Palkia, right? So we also have trouble with Gastrodon, and having Amoonguss take Gastrodon was something that we considered, and I ended up running, whereas some of my team building partners did not. Did you ever consider, like, for example, a Grass move on Amoonguss?
Yeah, I totally considered Giga Drain on Amoonguss. I think I might have had it swapped out for Pollen Puff briefly, and maybe even Protect. Looking back, but because I didn't think I could fit it. I thought Pollen Puff was too helpful of a tech for Giga Drain to be worth the swap. And then Ogre, of course, I had thought about Water Spout, but it synergizes pretty negatively with Life Orb.
Right.
And I know I wanted Protect on my Life Orb Pokemon.
And then I guess Incineroar also, I guess, very often wants a harder hitting dark move. Did you ever consider something like a Darkest Lariat or a Throat Chop on it?
Actually, yeah, I did have Darkest Lariat instead of U-Turn momentarily. But U-Turn, like having Incineroar as a pivot is just so beneficial to Intimidate that I ended up just keeping U-Turn. And I think oh my gosh, and what is the ground move it learns? Incineroar learns a ground move, no?
Is it just Bulldoze? I don't know if it learns another one. Or I guess it learns Earthquake too.
Yeah, I think I might have been looking at a ground move on Incineroar for some coverage. And close combat's really cool, but I couldn't really fit close combat onto Incineroar. Yeah, I definitely needed Fake Out and Flare Blitz.
Right.
Yeah, and then looking back too, I probably could have. Well, I maybe could have made Incineroar Brave instead of Adamant to get a bit more chip damage on that Snarl. I cannot remember. Oh, Calyrex Ice. If I super minimized its speed, it could run the risk of underspeeding Calyrex Ice, and that would be no good.
Sure.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
I have seen people run like 20 speed, maybe a little more than that, Calyrex Ice recently. So outspeeding that with Incineroar does seem important.
Yeah, definitely. Even though I want to play in Trick Room, it's usually we're not playing in that Trick Room. Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the cool things about your team is that a lot of times these sort of Necrozma Duskmane teams that I saw earlier in the format were hard Trick Room teams. You get it up turn one, you try to win the game in your 5 turns, and if you don't, you're going to struggle a lot. But your team has a lot of ways, like Light Screen, like Pollen Puff. I mean, like Incineroar is obviously just incredible to really like get that second trick room up or get a trick room up later in the game that allows you to not only exert a ton of pressure early on in the game, but also once your opponent's kind of exhausted their resources to prevent trigger from going up, then you get it up and then you make your big push. And that's just a very different way of playing this team that I think is really really cool and is part of why you've managed to find success with it when other people really haven't.
Yeah, it's definitely um yeah, you mentioning like two trick rooms in a game. Yeah, this is definitely a team that like play a really slow game. Like I'm usually finding myself sort of yeah, stalling out a max, which my Pokemon are super capable of doing, which is awesome. Um yeah, like definitely maxing second. Um and right, having my opponent like exhaust their resources. This team definitely plays a super slow game, but at the same time can exert a whole lot of immediate pressure with that Life Orbs Kyogre. Like oh, one of my favorite leads is Kyogre Mimikyu. And if they don't have like sometimes I can really just click Origin Pulse Trick Room if not a lot of pressure is being exerted on Kyogre, if I don't think Kyogre is in range of like, taking 50% or anything like that. And then that's just yeah, a ton of damage. And even Trick Room Protect so that Kyogre can just Origin Pulse and do an insane amount of damage on turn 2 with his Thunder or Ice Beam. Yeah. Yeah, the team can definitely go really quickly as well if when it needs to.
Right,
Um,
it's definitely got the damage output to like steamroll teams that aren't prepared for it.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Um,
And so, do you want to talk me through the game plans that you had for some of the common archetypes that you might see?
yeah, so against so I guess starting with the first archetype, Swordfish, the Zacian Kyogre, that team, just sort of thinking about it, definitely likes to go fast. I guess I don't see too many Tornadoes anymore, but definitely like I think it's Zapdos, Max Airstream, or maybe like a Whimsicott Tailwind even. Um, yeah, so definitely I want to set up a Trick Room going into that, and yeah, that would probably typically be like Necrozma, Ogre, Mimikyu, Amoonguss. Amoonguss can just once I have my Trick Room up, um, and then even maybe if I needed to guarantee a Trick Room, Mimikyu and Incineroar on occasion, for fake out pressure. Um, but yeah, like getting that Trick Room up and then just super disrupting them with an Amoonguss or an Incineroar and getting Necrozma into position can just be detrimental for a Swordfish team with probably, an Incineroar, maybe like a Rillaboom as a grass type. Yeah, Necrozma heartily takes care of Rillaboom. And even Ogre, if it needs to max, if I'm in like a terrible position, need to max like a Hailstorm, can typically OHKO Rillaboom as well. Um, um, yeah. Yeah, and then like anything in the air, Kyogre can handle it as well, with Ice Beam or Thunder, pretty typically. Yeah, so Swordfish, I'm definitely just trying to get Trigger Room up and like, game one sort of suss out items and be able to play off of that as well. Yeah, and so then the other side, the other, common weather, Hot Dog with Zacian and Groudon. So that what I faced in my first round of Top Cut, yeah. So those teams typically have that Gastrodon, and so normally at that point, I think I'm just trying to sort of KO other mons around it. So like the strategy that I was trying to pull off in game 2 of my second Top Cut game was I was bringing Kyogre and exerting a lot of pressure, and I was going to try to ignore Gastrodon by snarling it numerous times. My first thought was my Light Screen Mimikyu, so I could boost Gastrodon once and then still sort of ignore it, because I thought I could hopefully finish the job in 8 turns, the 8 turns that Light Screen provided me. And then yeah, 1 Origin Pulse should be enough to really help, but that was definitely not enough. So then I had thought, yeah, multiple Snarls, but I just needed Incineroar to pivot a bit faster. But yeah, so basically like using getting rid of Gastrodon is sort of the strategy there. And if there is no Gastrodon, I'm super in the clear against Sun. Just sort of pivoting Kyogre around. And truthfully, honestly, Amoonguss would have been really helpful in the matchup as well. Because Amoonguss, if I can get a Trick Room up, even though Gastrodon is slower than almost all of my Mons, if I can put that to sleep with my Amoonguss, that buys me time to just sort of smack whoever's next to Gastrodon. Yeah, and against a Sun team, like, you know, Steelspikes into Groudon, even Ice Beam and Groudon, really strong. Even Water moves at times, if I think I can really ignore a sleeping Gastrodon, or even a couple of Max Hailstorms into it, or Max Quakes into it. Max Quakes that let me then later use Origin Pulse more freely. But yeah, so that's my Sun, and then yeah, against the my first 2 games I played in Swiss were against Calyrex Palkia teams, and those were Kyogre obviously doesn't really like facing Palkia, but Necrozma really likes facing Calyrex, and so even though Calyrex underspeeds both of my restricteds, it's again probably sort of like Necrozma Dusk main, Kyogre, Mimikyu, Amoonguss. Even though Incineroar can really mitigate Calyrex's damage output, being able to underspeed Calyrex and put it to sleep, Amoonguss was just such crucial and such oppressive support.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so if I can like stall out a Calyrex Max, you know, Mimikyu set up Trick Room and then sort of freely put in Amoonguss, because unless a Calyrex, the Calyrex I faced, the 2 that I faced did not have grass moves, because that Seed Bomb tech is definitely dangerous against Ogre, but Ogre can definitely survive other Calyrex moves, at least one of them, to let Mimikyu put up pressure. And also, Mimikyu just in general is it's sort of really good bait to let me have a lot of free damage output and sometimes free KOs into a lot of teams. And oftentimes, if the Palkia maxes, it wants to max Wormwind to sort of to reduce my Necrozma's damage output in general, and Mimikyu is definitely a nice switch into that if I can predict a max Wormwind. And just sort of, yeah, my team can typically pretty effectively, or it has pretty effectively stalled out Palkia maxes, which has been really nice. And then I guess sort of the last, well, I guess there's sort of 2 more that are really big. The Zacian Veltal. So this one is actually pretty scary for my team. Like, this one makes me maybe the first or second most nervous. This one is, since a lot of Yveltal run Foul Play, that definitely does massive damage to Necrozma. But Kyogre can really, with its Ice Beam and Thunder, can really pretty effectively, like, I want to say, like, mostly handle Yveltal and definitely help stall out its max. And Mimikyu's Disguise too is really effective, and also Incineroar's Assault Vest. So typically, I guess depending on their support mons, so I'm definitely, in every matchup, I'm bringing Necrozma Kyogre as my damage output, and then depending on their support mons, I choose my Mimikyu, Incineroar, and Amoonguss based off of that. I definitely want to get up a Trick Room, so I'm almost always bringing Mimikyu. against the Yveltal. And yeah, depending on their other support, Amoonguss or Incineroar, which are both pretty good into Yveltal. Because even though my Amoonguss doesn't have Koba, that sash puts in a lot of work. And so, yeah, that becomes a matter of really just stalling out whomever they might Dynamax. And if they don't Dynamax their Yveltal, then actually Necrozma can survive a lot of dark type attacks and dish out really big damage in return. Even though it can't Quake into Yveltal, a Steelspike, a +2 Steelspike, can usually KO, and sometimes even a +1. Yeah, and then I haven't even been mentioning the Zacian and Groudon, Kyogre. Yeah, Zacian is like this team. The beautiful thing about this team is that aside from play rough into Kyogre, Zacian, this team really does not fear Zacian, which is Zacian is sort of the most popular Pokemon being used. I think it's probably the strongest. It's definitely the strongest restricted, and yeah, and this team just doesn't fear Zacian too much at all. A Sacred Sword against Necrozma's defense boosts is annoying, but it's not really, since it has such high defense and pretty solid HP anyway. It's not devastating or terrifying.
Right. Hey, honestly, that's the way the metagame's been going. I know that the Sun team that's really popular. The scary thing about that is that I think there's one Pokemon that doesn't like Zacian, and everything else just gets to ignore it, and that's so powerful because it's on basically every team. And yeah, being able to ignore Zacian on a team like this is just so valuable.
Yeah.
Or not necessarily ignore it. I guess it's still going to do damage, but have a lot of ways to deal with it.
Yeah, it definitely has to. I definitely have to smack it a lot of times. Because even Zacian's gonna live an Origin Pulse, a Life Orb Origin Pulse, which is just really annoying. But yeah, definitely not ignored, but really, it's definitely really mitigated here. It's nerfed against my team, I guess. But yeah, and then so the last two are the other two sort of steel mons that give me pause sometimes. Dialga and Solgaleo. Since I don't have Wisp for the Solgaleo, that definitely becomes Incineroar. Incineroar is typically not going to be brought there, and Mimikyu definitely fears its Sunsteel Strike. My Mimikyu almost always faints to a Sunsteel Strike straight from Solgaleo. And typically, since Solgaleo's led, I'll have to lead I typically max Ogre in that matchup, and I'm just hitting it over and over with max Geysers. Or if I can stall it out, then I can use one or maybe two fewer max Geysers to KO the Solgaleo. But yeah, I'm definitely not wanting to ever hit it with a max Quake. And then Dialga, I definitely just have to. I have to wait until it stops being big. If I think I ran into one Dialga, and I think I ended up putting it to sleep in one of the games, which was just that that let me take a lot of deep breaths. That let me breathe a lot more easily. If the Dialga can just sort of be literally put to sleep. Yeah, and I think that
covers. You talked about Caloric Shadow a little bit earlier, but do you have any other thoughts on that one?
Yeah, Caloric Shadow. The Mimikyu's Shadow Sneak is just insane. It's actually yeah, two Pokemon only really do damage on my team, but then actually against an entire restricted, Mimikyu does insane damage. So that's super helpful. And then being able to survive the Astral Barrage with Necrozma, and then Kyogre's awesome base special defense lets it take a couple of Astral Barrages sometimes. Yeah, that's definitely not one that I have to worry about too much. Which is really nice.
Yeah, Mimikyu's just puts in work against that matchup. I guess maybe the Indeedee could give you a little bit of trouble if they have one of those.
Yeah, if they have an NDD, then I'm definitely bringing in Cineroar, and I'm probably leading it. The Snarl pressure is really nice too, being able to, and that's another reason not to bring that over Darkest Lariat, because of the spread, like simply for NDD, Calyrex, and then also just yeah, nerfing both of their special attacks is really invaluable.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, so that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for walking through your matchups, and hopefully this makes it easier to pick up this team if you want to use it. Did you have any Did you have any notable matchups that you want to talk about from your tournament run?
Yeah, yeah, totally. So the matchup that a matchup that really stuck out to me was against shout out to Tecmo VGC, Edward Gold. So in that matchup, so Tecmo had this was a this was actually Zacian Caloric Shadow. And it actually was pretty tough. I really do like that matchup. But Tecmo made it really tough for me. So it was Zacian, Rillaboom, Blastoise, Life Orb, Thundurus, excuse me, Caloric Shadow, and that Indeedee you were talking about. Um, so game one was a loss. I think I got swept in either 3 or 4 turns. And so yeah, so Tecmo led Rilla and Caloric Shadow with Thundurus and Zacian in the back. And um I think I can't remember exactly what I led. It might have been I think I think I ended up leading Incineroar, seeing that NTD Caloric Shadow, and also Intimidate would have been is great against Zacian, Rillaboom, and no, actually I think my issue was I didn't lead Rillaboom. No, I definitely led Mimikyu, Kyogre. I thought I could sort of because actually his Thundurus, the Defiant Thunderous scared me. So I
Mhm.
didn't end up leading Incineroar. And so after that game, after getting swept, yeah, I can't remember the turns and how they went, but I just sort of got eaten. My Incineroar was in the back. I threw it out against Thundurus. The Life Orb Thundurus maxed. It got its Defiant boost, and with the Life Orb, it just went insane. And so then and this was the game where I was thinking, I think this was my 5-1 game. And so I knew I was assuming that if I lost this game, I would definitely be out. Um, like there would be no chance anymore. And so after getting swept game one in 4 turns, I I was pretty shaken. But I think I knew I had to. I just needed to guarantee Trick Room, and Kyogre wasn't helping me guarantee Trick Room, so I got swept. And then game two, it was Incineroar, Mimikyu, and um, Tecmo actually did lead Thundurus that time. Got the Defiant boost. This helped against Rillaboom though, and with a fake out, yeah, I was able to guarantee Trick Room, and then yeah, that whole hyper offensive, Tecmo's entire like hyper offensive, like super quick, rush in, destroy everything I have strategy was just like totally mitigated. And then game three, I led Incineroar and Mimikyu again, I believe. And yeah, and the strat worked out. I think Tecmo tried like might have I'm not sure. I can't remember what exactly they went for. But it was something. It was definitely like a risk. That did not, I think, end up paying off. And yeah, and that brought me back. That was yeah. It was just. I guess it was just so memorable. Because I think like the only adaptation, or like the entire adaptation that I think had to be made, like I realized, and that was really. It was really a big moment. I think. Um, just of like a moment of sort of realizing hope and like coming back. And yeah, I mean, honestly, just kind of like a moment of pride. I was like, okay, cool, you've got this. Like, let's keep going. But it was a really tough set, and I definitely got swept in like 4 turns. Tech mode dominated me. That game one.
That is what Caloric Shadow tends to do.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, like if they aren't winning in 4 turns, it's really hard for them to win a lot of times. But I mean, you also like you figured out that just because Thunderous has defined doesn't mean you can't lead in Cineroar. You know, if you get Tricker up, honestly, the Thunderous isn't even doing that much to you, and you have like your really powerful max options into it. Especially just like your Kyogre is going to do so much back to it, or your Amoonguss is going to sport or whatever. You know, you have a ton of options there. So
yeah,
yeah, I mean, you figured out the game plan, and honestly, that's what good players do, right? You just have to. Sometimes you lose game one. Sometimes you get surprised. Sometimes you just can't. It takes time to figure out, but you have to bounce back, and you did a really good job of that, and that's why you cut this regional. And I guess on that note, those are all the questions that I have. Did you have any final words or shout outs that you wanted to give?
yeah, definitely. Shout out to at Ricky Spud with 2Ds on Twitter. This was my friend who went with me to our first regional, our platinum regional when we were children, and came here with me and helped me prep the nights before, competed with me, and when and just was incredible support the entire way. Like every time, if he would finish his match first, he'd be there just like cheering me on. And yeah, that was awesome. And then also shout out to Staticosaurus for helping me actually get Mimikyu and Amoonguss no good speed and no good attack on cartridge. That was insane. That was awesome. And then shout out to the entire USPA Discord for just like being incredible people to meet and hang out with at the event, and then specifically the Kansas Missouri Moonlights for just growing me immensely as a player, really giving me like a lot of best of 3 experience, and always being like really active and really there to help with any questions, and any like optimizations, and everything, and just yeah, yeah, being so kind. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And congratulations once again on the regional top cut. Again, just like this regional was stacked. It was so many good players there, and you managed to, I mean, not all of them, beat almost all of them on your way to a top 8 finish.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
yeah, and again with a really cool team. That's something that we haven't really seen a ton of in the past couple months. So I definitely recommend that you try it out. And of course, the rental code is on screen right now. The paste will be in the description. And I believe you said you are also writing a team report for Victor Road. Is that right?
Yeah, that I just sent it into them, and they're I guess it's in review right now. Yeah, so that should be out hopefully. Yeah, and yeah, finally shout out to all my Pokemon for anytime I played an out, giving it to me. My Pokemon insanely incredible. Yeah, Kyogre had hit a Thunder in while it was hailing. Shout out to Necrozma Duskbane. Sheesh, yeah, these Pokemon awesome, awesome.
Yeah, and shout out to your Pokemon. And that's all I got. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Follow Jeremy on Twitter. Linked in the description. And until next time, we'll see you all later.